Okay, good morning. I am Kadeen Smith, the Project Coordinator for the Caribbean Future Forum, based in the Office of the United Nations Resident Coordinator, Trinidad and Tobago. Today we'll be briefly discussing decent work and economic growth, which is Goal 8 of the 17 newly adopted Sustainable Development Goals. I have the distinct pleasure of discussing this goal in the context of the Caribbean with Mr. Ryder, the Director General of the International Labour Organization, more commonly referred to as the ILO. And Mr. Ryder, I'd like to just thank you very much for being with us here today.
Great to be here.
Moving right into the first question. How do you see that the Sustainable Development Goals can be relevant in responding to economic recession and unemployment in the Caribbean? And what would be the ILO's role?
Right. Let me just begin by underlining just how important we at the ILO regard this UN 2030 Sustainable Agenda. This is the blueprint for global development in the next 15 years. I think one of the really important things about this agenda is it's clearly universal. It is addressed at every single member state of the United Nations and of the ILO. So it is really a chance for us to plot a new future. We are very pleased in the ILO that decent work figures so prominently in the agenda. As you've mentioned, SDG 8 talks specifically about inclusive growth, full employment and decent work for all. And we think this is of fundamental importance because creating decent work is both a means of development and an end result of development. And I would also just like to say that whilst SDG 8 is fundamentally important to the decent work agenda, there are many other aspects spread across the 17 goals which are also relevant. I think of gender issues, I think of social protection issues, I think of fundamental rights protection, I think of the role of enterprises in development. So we've got a tremendous opportunity here. Now, how does all that relate to the Caribbean? I've said this is a universal agenda relevant to all. But being here in the Caribbean, I think I can detect a really close fit between some of the major challenges facing the Caribbean and the content of the agenda. As you've indicated, these are difficult times for the global economy, and the Caribbean is not exempt from some of the difficult consequences. We're sitting here in Port of Spain in Trinidad and Tobago, where we see that the economy is suffering the effects of the drop in oil prices, some difficult conditions in the steel industry as well. And I think the lesson there is that the Caribbean, like everywhere else, is part of a global economy. It will not develop in independence of that global economy, but has to develop resilience and the capacity to adapt to changing global circumstances. Now, if you look at the 2030 agenda, you will see a particular reference to full employment, and within that, a particular priority to the situation of young people on labour markets. Now, unfortunately, youth unemployment is a global problem. It's felt with particular force here in the Caribbean. You have some of the highest rates of youth unemployment in the world. I think if you average out the figures across the sub-region, you're at 25%. Now, what I think the agenda, 2030 agenda does is give us an opportunity to put youth at the centre of our efforts and to design policies which address the needs of young people. Now, this is not an easy challenge. There are several aspects to it. We have to promote the role of private enterprise, private business. We have to search for the right macroeconomic and governmental policies. We have to look at skills and training policies. We have to look at public employment services. So I would not like anybody to get the idea that this agenda provides a silver bullet solution for youth unemployment or unemployment in general. We need to combine many areas of policy making. And that is why I always think of this 2030 agenda as implementation, as a whole of government endeavour. It's not just the ministries of labour, or ministries of finance, or foreign ministries. It's bringing everybody together. And in the ILO, we attach real importance to bringing workers and employers' organisations who are part of our membership of the ILO are tripartite into the equation. And the first step, I think, must be to develop national development strategies. Now, in Trinidad and Tobago, again, it's a great example. We know that there is a 2030 vision for the future development of the country. And I think that's a fantastic vehicle for bringing the UN 2030 agenda into national policy thinking. National ownership is absolutely fundamental to the success of this agenda. The international system has to be there in support of national decision making.
Thank you very much. And then going to the second question, you mentioned tripartite agreements.
Yep.
And so it's how important is social dialogue for implementing sustainable development goals, and what lessons can be shared with Trinidad and Tobago and by extension the wider Caribbean based on experiences with other countries for a successful tripartite dialogue in times of recession?
Well, as I've indicated, I think that tripartite social dialogue is of fundamental importance. It's the way the ILO works, it's the way we do our business, and whilst I think in some cases in some countries, people think tripartism can get in the way of good decision making. It takes time. It takes an investment of effort and political will. But the fact of the matter is, and I think experience demonstrates this, if you invest fully in tripartite dialogue, it produces the results. It produces results which are both balanced and fair and add to the legitimacy of public acceptance of decisions made. Now, in the Caribbean, I think there are two things that I can say. Most Caribbean countries, I'm tempted to say all Caribbean countries, have strong traditions of tripartite dialogue. I think it comes from the history of your region. I think it comes from the strong implication of your social partners, often in the movement for independence, right from the beginning of your country's independent existence. So we have the institutions, we have the organizations of workers and employers, and we have the strong will, I believe, to make these processes work in a productive way. But that's not enough. It's great to have the institutions, it's great to have the people, but you need to make sure that social dialogue is not simply a formality, it is something which produces results. I think people in the end will judge social dialogue by the results it produces. And I think on some occasions there is some frustration in this region as elsewhere that the results of social dialogue have not been as effective or as productive as people would have liked. Very interestingly, again, in Trinidad and Tobago, the new government here has established a new tripartite advisory council. It's beginning its work. It's got a very ambitious set of terms of reference, but I think it's a great example of investing in social dialogue and making it work. I also hope that at the regional level, the CARICOM level, the work that the ILO is doing to promote social dialogue between the Caribbean Employers Confederation and the Caribbean Congress of Labour for regional social dialogue can add a new and important layer to this process. If we can get regional social dialogue into the formula, then I think we're doing something important as well. We're doing our best to make that happen.
Thank you very much. Again, I'd like to thank you for your time and your very comprehensive responses. I think that in a time where we have this climate of economic recession, your points on fully investing in social dialogue, investing in youth, very much relevant. And again, I thank you and I hope that your visit to Trinidad has been and will continue to be very successful.
Thank you very much.